everybody, good morning. This is Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I am doing a tutorial for you today. I've been telling you about it, and that is my trip around the world quilt. I had gotten a request from Anita, and Anita had asked me if I would do a baby quilt trip around the world. Obviously, this is not a baby quilt. I chose to pull my own fabrics from my stash here, using the black, the green, and the white. I had this black and white polka dot left over from my Dresden plate quilt, and I just pulled it, but I quite like these. I'm using black. I used mainly 10 pieces of fabric for this quilt. I actually used 12, but that's just 10 for the main, and then 11, 12. Just two little tiny pieces for the center here. These 5 pieces of fabric. You just need scraps. But I show you this I've made with 10 different fabrics, and the way I've described it is a 10 by 10 grid. You don't need to do, and it's made a square quilt. It's about 45 inches square. You don't need to do a grid, a 10 by 10 grid. You can do, again, I explain it, you can do maybe 6 fabrics across and then have maybe 12 fabrics up to make more of a rectangular quilt. You don't need to do it in all different fabrics. You could do it in 3 different fabrics. But the whole point is a little bit of contrast. Now, Anita, you had asked for a baby quilt. I show you in the beginning of my tutorial that I had a baby looking pale pink, pale blue, creamy jelly roll. That would have made a smaller quilt, a jelly roll. And again, I explained that because you would need 2 of the same pattern. I thought it was a bit too low volume, maybe perfect for a baby quilt, but I just thought, well, if I'm going to make it, I'd never made one before, if I'm going to figure it out, I just sort of want it bright and happy. So I did have to pull from my stash. I say in my video, I believe I say I used 1/3 of a yard. I used 1/4 of a yard. So 1/4 of a yard to cut your 3 2.5 inch strips for these 10 different fabrics. That's all. It's a very easy quilt to make. Now, I used 2.5 inch strips, and they came up 2.5 inches square. By all means, you could use 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch strips, and it would use the exact same principle, the exact same tutorial. It would just make your quilt that much bigger. That's it. Very simple quilt. It looks like it has a million seams. We're just doing a stripped unit, like a strip piecing, and then we're subcutting and putting it back together. The important thing I found with this quilt, although it's very easy, and I would actually say it's for a beginner, is I go into depth, as I do, repeating, how important it is to iron, to press your seams. I made 6 strip sets. I only needed 5. I had a few left over, but I made 6. It ended up that way anyway. It was fine. And I pressed 3 strip sets going one way, the seams, 3 strip sets going the opposite. That's because you wanted to nest the seams together in your quilt. But again, this quilt was made in 4 sections, and then a center row horizontally and vertically. That's it. Very, very simple. The 4 sections are made exactly the same way. You just sort of mirror image them. Now, I did have a pattern that I used in the very beginning for 1 section, and then I did it visually. I put the pattern aside and I did it visually because I had to have it in front of me because it was mirror image and then sort of upside down. So I did make a mistake at the very end, my very last strip, and I just wanted to share with you. I had made this, and I had pulled, I show you in the beginning of my tutorial, a jelly roll that I had pulled this fabric from here. I made this little quilt here. Okay, I made this lovely little quilt, and let me just see. I finished it up, awesome, lovely, super, right? It's on, it's lovely and quilted. I just put this backing on it. Sweet. I did a little grid, and as I finished putting the binding on it, I found I made 1 strip wrong. Can you see it? On this side, I was looking visually at the hot pink. Hot pink goes right around. You see that hot pink? That goes right around. But I'm showing you in the tutorial, there's 2 piles. that you pull from. The piles are, it's simple to keep track of. Oh, well, it was simple. I didn't keep track of it at the very end. This strip and this last strip I got wrong, right? But it's the piles of your ironing's going one way and your seams are going another. That's it. I'm making a big song and dance of it. But I pulled from the wrong pile. You see that? I was looking visually at this, but then I realized, oh, I pulled from the wrong pile. And I had finished my entire quilt. And that bit over here is wrong. But it's a pretty little quilt. This quilt is about 36 inches. This quilt made up with using a jelly roll, using up, I believe it was 8 pieces in a jelly roll that had two of the same pattern. You would have needed 2 of the same. Now this quilt here, the jelly roll I couldn't have a jelly roll that had 3 of the same pattern, and I needed 3. So I had to cut from my yardage. That was all. So that's that. I have to quilt this. Yeah, I'll probably just do again, as I did in this one, I'll probably just do sort of just a grid pattern. I just put a little bit of pop of white in there. And then as I said, I just quilted it in the grid. Real sweet little quilt. Like that's a baby size quilt. This is just perhaps like over the back of a sofa. So that's my quilt, Anita. I hope you will make one and share it with me. The last video I put up, I was just rambling on and chatting with you about your lovely comments. My vertigo is gone. But boy, oh boy, so many of you guys have experienced that. And boy, that is not nice. That is not nice. I did not have to take a medication for it. I just did an over-the-counter motion sickness. Ian got me white water. Oh, somebody did say, quite a few were like, no, you really need to drink water. I drink a lot of water anyway. It's funny because I drink a lot of water. Ian doesn't. It's funny that I'm always saying, Ian, you must drink a bit more water. He drinks tea, but he doesn't drink a lot of water. It's funny that we don't drink soda. I drink tea and water. I don't drink coffee. And Ian has a coffee now and again, maybe twice a week or something. He has a coffee. So we're just tea and water drinkers, really. We do drink milk with our cereal or with our porridge or whatever. But I drink a lot of water. It was funny when he was saying that. You'd be like, dehydration. I'm like, I'm not dehydrated. Anyway, that was that. There's exercises you can do for the vertigo. Never want to experience that again. Horrific, horrific. Anyway, that's that. I still haven't gotten my quilt back, my Phoenix quilt, rising from the ashes. But it'll come. It'll come. And when it does, somebody said do an unboxing, but I just want to finish that, bind it, and then show it in all of its glory. I really am anxious to get that back. Our block party will be on. I'm going to, even though it's sort of going to be random, there will be some semblance of order in my randomness. You get that. I'm going to try to make sort of a pattern. So somebody said that to do a mystery quilt, which it sort of would be, is sort of like freaks you out. Well, I understand that. You want to know what you're making at the end of the day. So I'm going to give us a general overview of the blocks, because I will be making several size blocks. I'm not just making a million 6-inch blocks. Boring. I'll change it up with 12-inch. Oh, multiples of 3, whoever that was. Because I couldn't figure, I was trying to explain that. You have 2 here to make up a 12 and 3 to make up an 18. It's multiples of 3, right? So if you had an 18-inch block, that has taken up 9 6-inch blocks. Awesome. Because I don't want this to go into millennial, you know. Anyway, so we're all like have something to look forward to, something little to look forward to. We are going to survive 2021. Staying in our sewing rooms. We're going to survive. I hope everybody's feeling well. I hope you don't get dizzy and like I did and fall over. Oh my word, that was terrible. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this little tutorial. Trip around the world. Again, it's super simple. Just have to keep organized. And that's a good thing. But once you get going, there's only literally a few seams. And it looks like there's a million. There's not. There's just a few seams and a bit of precise cutting. But you guys can do it, make it a little trip around the world. As I said, if you wanted to do the 10 fabrics this size, you need about 1/4 yard of different fabrics. Or 1/4 yard, just cut a bunch of strips. And the thing is a contrast, a nice contrast around the world. And watch your strip sets. You don't want to get messed up like I did. All right, folks, thanks again, and I do hope you enjoy this tutorial. All right, see ya. My colors for my fabric for my trip around the world quilt, just a small little quilt. And I just wanted to explain. I was using 2.5 inch strips, and obviously 2.5 inch strips is a jelly roll. The quilt that I had shown you in the beginning was made from this jelly roll here, and it was called by Allison Glass. It's called Road Trip. Okay, 2.5 by 43 to 44 inch, 40 pieces, Andover fabrics. Now this jelly roll came with mostly one fabric pattern choices. Okay, mostly. It did not have, that was a double. It did not have a lot, except the ones I used, the eight that I used, 2 of each pattern. Okay, it has quite a lot of one of each of the pattern line, which is awesome. Awesome. You get a tremendous amount of variety out of this fabric line. Look at these. These are all one strip, all different fabrics here, okay? All different fabrics. There was only a couple doubles in this jelly roll, and I had used them because I needed to cut 2 strips for that jelly roll, for that quilt. Now this jelly roll I wanted to use because I wanted to use the bright colors, and I'll explain why. This is from Connecting Threads. This is a fabric line from Connecting Threads. Beautiful fabrics. Okay, now every single one of these fabrics here, there's one strip, which again, awesome. There's no doubles in this entire jelly roll here. Every single one is a pattern, is in the pattern line, and it's all different. You see that? Which is super if for a scrappy quilt. Awesome. I love Connecting Threads. Every single one, as you can see that. See that? Every single strip is different. But I pulled it out. I don't have a lot of jelly rolls because I think, as you know, I don't love jelly rolls. But for this quilt, I couldn't use this because I need 2 or 3 strips of each one. Okay, so I couldn't use that jelly roll, and I'll explain how I'm going to be cutting this. Now, if Anita, you wanted a baby quilt, this would have been the quilt that this was going to be the jelly roll. And again, for me, there's not enough, and it's beautiful. It's called Anna from the RK Studio RK. I think it's a Robert Kaufman fabric. Yes, a Robert Kaufman fabric. Yeah, Robert Kaufman. There's not enough contrast, and I think a trip around the world, you need a tremendous amount of contrast, or not. If this is all just pinks, blues, and creams, you have to remember that when you're making a trip around the world, if you want the definition and the contrast, this might not be a low volume, might not be what you want. Whereas I quite liked that, all of these, but I didn't have enough strips of the same. So I've chosen to use my own fabrics. I have pulled my own fabrics here for this quilt. Now, I hadn't been making a green quilt, and I quite liked these fabrics I put together. And actually, I must have been thinking about my Bargello quilt, because I used some of these in my Bargello. Well, maybe not all of them, but just a few of them, and I had added hot pink to go with it, if you go back on my Bargello quilt. But this is basically a green and a black and white quilt, and I haven't made green. I hadn't chosen from my green pile. So I've chosen to make this quilt a bit larger than the one I showed you in the beginning. I'm making these with 10 strips here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 greens, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 black, black and white, and then for a pop of contrast, I'm using my black and white dot, which I actually used on my last quilt. because I think you need that pop, that definition of around in a trip around the world. It can look maybe a little bit muddy or a little bit muted if you don't have that pop, and I quite liked that. I could have done a plain white, but this was hanging around, and I thought, oh yeah, I like the black and white. So basically this quilt is going to end up black, green, and a bit of white. You're going to be needing 12 fabrics, but 10 are the major components, because we're only going to be needing one fabric for the absolute center, okay, and then 4 pieces, 4 squares for this first, they're not square, you get me, okay, 4 squares on these units here. Now I will explain. I'm going to label this fabric, I'll label this fabric A, and these 4 B. Okay, just going to need 4 of them, right, for this, because this row here and this row here and that row there and that row there are going to be made of this unit, are going to be made of these fabrics. So forget the A and the B. I haven't even chosen my A and a B fabric because I want to see how my quilt looks, and then I'll do something maybe to pop, maybe a bright red in the middle or a hot pink in the middle, or maybe even a black. I'm not quite sure. I've just, but by all means you can choose, and again, if you want to do like a graph and color it in, that would be awesome. But this is sort of our pattern for 1/4. This is 1/4 of our quilt. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these making up our quilt, plus this fabric here and this line of fabrics here, this line of fabrics here. Okay, but for now we won't worry about these, this one going down here and that one going out there. Won't worry about this for now. Okay, what we wanted to do, we have 10 fabrics. What I've done on my quilt, my pattern, my quarter of my pattern, is I've made a 10 by 10 grid. Okay, these are my 2.5 inch squares. All right, and what I'm going to do is, however I'm going to choose to put my fabrics, this will be my grid. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? Now, I'm going to stagger. This is all we're doing on this quarter. We're going to start 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Back to 1. 3. So we're going 1, 2, 3. And I want 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Now 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want you to see that your fabrics, this is a quarter, the top left corner, your fabrics are going to go around in a diagonal, 3s, 3, 3, 3, up to 4, 4, 4, 4. You got that? So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Coming back 1, 2, 3. 5. Okay, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you are going to be marking your fabrics, which I'm just going to be doing it visually, but I will then realize, I will get in my mind, what's my fabric number 1? Okay, wherever it is in my tube, and that's to come. So this is how I'm going to do it. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. 6. So you see, there's all my 5s in a nice diagonal. There's all my 4s in a nice diagonal. 1/4 of it. My 4 is going down, my 4 is going up, my 4 is coming back. Lovely diamond around this A and B fabrics. So we're just going to be working on, when we cut our tubes, we're going to be working on this unit here. Don't worry about this piece here, because that will make sense. These and this will make sense. We're just going to concentrate on our 4 corners right now. And now I'm going to choose where I want my 10 fabrics in the order that I want them in. As you can see, I have cut 3 each. 1, 2, 3. 3 each 2.5 inch strips from all 10 of my fabrics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have these in no particular order, just as I pulled them off my stash. But that's going to come in a moment. But what I've done is I've lined these up really nice on my cutting mat here. And I was really careful cutting my 2.5 inch strips. Again, if you're using jelly rolls, then your work will have been done for you. As you can see on this side here, some of the fabrics are larger. Here's the selvages, some of them are longer. We're not worrying about that right now. We are going to be cutting, we're going to be making strip sets and cutting subunits from them, subsets from them, to make our quilt. But for now, what I want you to do is I have lined up all of my folds on all 3 pieces right here. There's the fold of my fabric, okay? This is the width of the fabric. What is it, 42, 43, whatever it is. This is in half, and they're folded. I've lined that up. I'm just doing these 7 of them. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the edges off here. I'm just going to do a nice clean cut here. I'm going to be making strip units, okay, just strip sets. It's very simple. I'm trying to do this step by step though, so it doesn't confuse you. But I find working with a strip set this wide, as what is it, 21 inches or whatever, as opposed to the whole length of a jelly roll or a whole length of a 2.5 inch strip, much easier. So I have to have a little bit more work in the stitching, but I find it a lot more accurate and a lot easier than to wrangle with an entire strip set, trying to get it all straight, ironing it, pressing it, and then cutting it into subsections. So what I'm going to do is I've taken my ruler here and I'm just cutting off those folds, just very carefully, just cutting off those folds right there, like that. Okay, so I have a nice straight edge right there. I'll just pick these up like that, and again, they're not right now, they're in no particular order. I'll put them to the side and I'll line these. There's 3 here. Oh, my folds are right there. There's 3 there, and there's 3 there. Trying to keep them as straight as possible, just to cut off that folded edge. Okay, now comes sort of the fun part. What we're going to do is I'm going to start by making what I think, it's sort of visual and I'm not quite sure, because I have basically green, white, and black, or green and black, and then a bit of white. I'm just going to pull what I think is going to be pleasing, and I basically want a black, green, and white quilt. Black, green, and white. So I'm going to just start pulling. Now I think I want this black next to that one, and again this is all, and again my folds are over here, and then I'll add a bit of green, and then I think I'm going to come in with this black and white, and then I think I'm doing another black, which will be this colorful one, and then in the middle of this lot I'm going to do my white dot, and then I'm going to do a darker green, and then another black and white, a lighter green, and a black. Now let me just see, I quite like that. But this is where you have to think. You have to think. We're going to sew these strips together. Easy peasy peasy. What? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seams. Just pulling from each pile, okay? We're going to be sewing these strip sets together. Now, we are then going to sew, once we have this sewn, we're going to sew this bottom seam here, this bottom one here, to this top one. We're going to be making this into a tube. We're going to be coming over there, and we're going to be stitching this bottom piece to that top piece. Now, if you can envision that this bottom piece will be attached to that top piece, then you have to sort of think, well, do I like that contrast? Do I like those two together? I know I like this one together. I know I like these two together. And then that's when you can sort of mess about. Do I want this black with the cherries up? Let me pull this down a bit. Do I want that black with the cherries up there next to that dark green? Because that's how it's going to be. And I don't think I do. There's more black and white in this quilt, although it reads green when I look at it. But I want it to read a bit more green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this bottom green there. So then when I make my tube, the whole time, the whole quilt, this green will be next to that green. And my black is more interspersed. I hope you get that. So I have black there, and black there. But you have to be aware that, like, if you're doing a rainbow color, you all of a sudden you like this and you have a red up there and a dark purple there. Well, then you're going to have each of those two similar colors right next to each other. You might not like that, or you might love it. So, and you don't need to have. This is not a scrappy trip around the world. This is a traditional, but you don't need 10 different fabrics. You could have 3 different fabrics. You could have 4 different fabrics, and I'll demonstrate. So as you can see, I have transferred from my cutting table. I did bring it over here next to my sewing machine. I've transferred the exact order that I want my strip sets to be in my trip around the world quilt. So what I'm doing is with these two, with the right sides together, in the order that they're coming off of my table here, I'm going to sew these strip sets together. I don't necessarily have to back stitch at this end. Now, when you're sewing these strips together, I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam. I've cut these. I'm sewing the cut edge, remember? But sometimes the selvage edge will be a little bit different. But, because all fabric manufacturers are different. But what I'm doing is so as not to get a curve in my strip set here, even though it's half, I'm just placing my fabrics together. I'm not pulling either the bottom or the top. I'm just placing them together as such. Now, I'm leaving my needle down, okay, and I'm grabbing my next set here. And again, I'm doing everything visually. I want this one on top because I want it, this is the bottom of my strip set right for now, and then I'm going to work my way up. So what I'm going to do is I'm making sure that this cut edge is nice and together, and I'm just going to stitch, chain piece, these 6 units together. Now, as I said, I'm not going to be using all of the subcuts because I'm cutting out 10, and one strip set only yields 8. So that's why I have to do a little bit extra. Oh, now that didn't cut, so I have to cut that on that fold. So just cut that like that. So just be very careful, 1/4 inch. finished all 6 of my strip set units, and I will have told you this in the beginning. You don't need 6. I believe I only needed 5. As I said, this is just the second time I made this quilt, and I had made it with a small quilt, and I needed 8 sections. I need 10, so I believe I only need to have, I have only needed to do 5 of these units. So I made an extra one, but that's okay. I will address that in the beginning. Hopefully that's how it's going to turn out. Now, this is how it's come off of my ironing board. And again, as I explained in the beginning, I had done another pattern that didn't work out. This is the one we are looking at. And this is the one I'm just deciding what my numbers are here. And this is how I've put them. So this is my, this is going to be number 10. This is going to be number 1. All right, that's all. This first one down here, this is going to be number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's how I've done that. That's just for now. But now, what we're going to do is we're going to be ironing these. And what we're going to do is I have 6 sets. Okay, whatever. I'm going to be ironing 3. With the seams going one way, and I'm going to be ironing 3, the seams going the other way. Now, they've been sewn exactly the correct way. It's just the way now we are ironing them. Okay, so what I do when I'm doing these strip sets, as you can see, they're fairly nice and straight. I'm just going to deem that this strip set, that on the next 2 strip sets, these 3 are going, I want the seams to go up one way. All right, so what I do is I just, on my ironing board here, I just dampen it pretty much, and I just give it a nice, I just going to do a nice little, a gentle tug, just a gentle tug, and just from the back side, I'm just going to push that up, those seams going up. Just pushing those seams going. I'm not really ironing them all yet. I'm just pushing them up, not pulling anything, just one way. I've ironed my 2 sets of strip sets, and as you can see, I've marked 3 that my seams have been pressed up going that way, and 3 my seams are going down, and I do believe we only need 5. I've done 6, but never mind. But what we're going to do now is on all 6 of them, just keeping these 2 piles, what we're going to do is we're going to put, remember the tube that we're making, we're going to be putting these 2 greens together. Now, I know that this edge here, where I had cut it off on my fold, is pretty straight. I'm not worried about this down here, okay? I know that I've sewn these pretty straight, so I'm going to put these 2 edges together, and I'm going to sew all of these seams into a tube. This seam here into a tube, 1/4 inch. Just doing it the exact same way. Matching my top, not worried about the bottom, because again, all of the selvages are different. I've sewn my top and my bottom greens together, and I've pressed my seams. And as I said, just for my reference sake, they're all exactly the same. They're constructed all exactly the same, but one lot of seams are going up and one down. That's just to make the nesting of it easier. So I'm just working with 3. Now my smaller quilt, we just needed 4 strip sets, 8 out of each one. But because this is bigger, I'm needing 10. That's why I did the extra. I believe I only need 5 strip sets, but that's that. I got my math a little bit wrong there. So what I'm going to do is I've just lined this edge up here. My selvage edge, which is all messed up, is over here. Now, if you've seen me do this before, I like to use a 2 ruler method, cutting sometimes. So I have my Fiskars ruler, but right now I have my lip ruler here also. This is an Olfa, a lip edge ruler. I'm just going to trim this edge up here, which is fairly nice and straight. And what I've done is I put all 3 strip sets. As you can see, they're really nice and straight, as much as I can do. So my subcut units that I'm going to have are nice and straight. So when we go to sew them together, the seams will nest. If they don't, it's all right. If they're a little bit off, it's fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 2.5 inch ruler here, and I'm going to find my 2.5 inch line, and I'm going to cut as many as I can. I need 10 for the quilt. So I'm just going to take these, and I'm just going to cut all of these in 2.5 inch segments here. And then there is all of this, all of the selvage to be gone. So these seams are going one way, and then I'm just going to continue. I'm going to make this up. These are going to be going the other way. I'll just straighten all this up on my board, get it nice and square and straight, just like the other, and I'll continue cutting all of these. After all of our arranging and sorting and organizing, I think that's the biggest thing with this quilt. The sewing isn't a big deal. It really is not. What I have here is I have my 2 piles exactly the same way they've been constructed, exactly. So, but what I am going to do is I'm going to take my 1 pile here, and this has 10 pieces in it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I'm going to deem my, this is where you're going to, if you haven't done it beforehand, you're going to deem one of these fabrics number 1, and green as my number 1. Okay, this green is my number 1. Now, what I'm going to do is I can just pull that apart. Okay, I can just pull that apart like that. So now, here's my first row here. Okay, it's going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, up to there. So that's going to be my first one. Now those are going up, those seams. So I'm going to take one from here. You see this, oops, I dropped that. These seams are going down, okay, the way I've done it. Now I'm going to find, what I'm going to do is we're going to sew our next row together, okay? And I'm going to find my number 2, which is my dot, okay? Now I do this visually because I get a little bit messed up. And also, I look, this seam is going up, so this one has to go down when I sew them together, okay? This is where I do it really visually. So, this one, when I put the right sides together, like that, okay? You see how it steps down? Now I'm going to visually do this the whole way. And when I sew that together, that seam is going down, and that seam is going up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate from number 2 to number 1 and pull that apart and do that, okay? And here are my first 2 rows, okay? There's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So now, just going to put that aside. As you can see, it just steps down, and again, I can see that my seams, because I've pressed one going down and one going up, my seams are nesting beautifully. I finished the top left corner of my quilt here, and I've just pressed it, and here is the top left corner, okay, that I was doing. How I've pressed it is sort of like I did the other, because the seams are going one way, this way, that way, this way, that way, up, down, up, down, up, down. I just very carefully pressed these. There are 9 seams. It took me 15 minutes to sew this together. Very, very simple, and yet look at all of the impact that you get. So I spritzed it with my water, and I made sure that it's lovely, again, lovely and square. And I use the water to sort of, because I don't pre-wash, I use the water to sort of shrink back the fiber. I'm working on the upper right part of my quilt here. And as you see, again, it's it works up very quickly. because we're only doing 9 seams here. It looks like a million seams, but we're only doing 9 seams. The strip setting, the strip piecing has worked beautifully. As you can see, I'm not using my paper pattern because again, my lefts and rights and mirror image, and I get freaked out over that. So I just have that piece up there, and all I'm doing is I'm doing the opposite for my upper right bit here. I have my 2 corners done, my top left and my top right. Now I'm working on my bottom left, and I'll finish up my bottom right. Now again, I'm doing this visually because my head works that way. Now I know that I have to start with the green one and come back down with the white, that row, okay? So I look at my seam allowance of my seams, and I see that they're going up. So I'm going to pull my coming up. Again, visually, I'm going to figure out where I would separate and how it would look. And there you go. And then I want all my seams to go one way. So I pulled from my up pile. Oh, they're going down. I pulled from my up pile. Oh, wait a second. I want my seams all to go. Oh, flipping it. Oh, see that? See, it's going opposite. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I'm doing again the mirror image. So what I think is going up. Let me just see. I'll pull from this pile. Visually, it's going like that. I'm coming down, and oh yeah, look. So this seam here is going up, and so that seam there is going up. So I pulled, because it's sort of upside down. That's what it is. It's upside down. I had to pull from the damper. Oh, I hope I'm not confusing you guys, but this is how sometimes I get a bit confused, but how I work it out. Again, I'm working it out visually. So this is my row here. So what I do is I'm just gonna pull that apart, lay that there. And now, since I pulled from the down to do that one, I'm gonna take this one, and I'm going to see that that's going to be that. I want my design to go around. So my white, and this is coming, there's my white, my black, my stripe, my white, my black, my stripe. So now I'm going to see, yeah, see, now that one, this one, my seams are going up, and this one's going down. I just finished my 4th panel here. It's lovely, my white, my black, my greens. I was doing so well, pulling from my ups and my downs, confusing my already confused brain a little bit. And I've took it over to my ironing board. This one, they're all nicely pressed. I'm pressing them, and then I'm looking at this. Wah, wah. I pulled from the wrong pile. But I thought, oh, that one goes up there, right? But I was looking at my seams that I'm nesting, that I'm making a big song and dance about, but I actually pulled from the wrong pile. So I had it all, you see that? Now let me see if I can get this correct. I've just seen this and I just ripped it, but I thought, oh, I'll put my camera up and I'll show you. So this seam is going down. Is it going to do the same thing? So I got my piles confused. So I have to figure out. So this one, forget that. No. So I need this black and white and the green coming down. And then I want my seams going up. The black and white forget this one. So that looks right, correct? And then all of them are, oh no. Oh yeah, they're going up. They're going up. So my blacks are going up, my black and whites. You see this is, and I'll address this in the beginning, how much more of a visual quilt this is, as opposed to like following charts. So that's right, that seam is going down, this one's going up. So now, this is the proper one, and I can just, you didn't see me do that, folks. I can just, fell on the floor. I can just go over, I'll press that real well, and then I can, there we go. Then I can do my final bit. I have all my 4 corners done, and I realized, again, with my my dyscalculia brain, that I'm not really good with lefts and rights and mirror image. I figured out, as probably you guys have, that 2 of these, 1, 2, are constructed the same. And then these 2 are constructed the same. There are lefts and rights. I didn't have to go through the whole visual rigmarole that I did, but I'm glad that I did it, that it worked out beautifully, except for the mistake I had made because I was getting a little bit confused. Again, this is a multicolored quilt. If you'd only had done 3 or 4 colors, it would have been a bit, perhaps even a little bit more defined, our trip around the world. Again, your color choices are up to you. I quite like the patchwork looking. Now, we are down to the point where I had said, this is where we're going to be going here, right? Remember? Here's our quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're concentrating on our filler pieces and our A fabric and our B fabric. I had chosen my 10 fabrics for this the body. Now I went and I pulled a couple, and this is what I came up with to make it pop a little bit and to have a little bit more relief. I like the black and white dot. Very expected. This is a very I think, not a quiet quilt, but a very expected quilt. There's nothing that jumps out at you, obviously, except all of the fabrics. This is the fabric I've chosen for my B fabric. We need to cut 4 2.5-inch squares of both of B, and the 1 center 2.5-inch square of my A. So again, visually, I'm laying it out, and this is like a black, just a dot that has it has blacks and blues and greens and oranges, but it's a little bit punchy because I'm going to border this quilt with this dot. Just a thin 1-inch border with this black dot, just to bring it out and to finish my edge, but to bring it all together. But I'll show you that at the end. So this is our center. That's my center. Now, I have pulled from my piles, I have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 that we're going to be needing. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to be messing about with them in a second. And I do have, as I was saying, we're going to have leftovers. I have 4 left over. I have 4 leftover strips. This is the one that I had pulled off the edge that has all the threads on. So I'm not going to be using that. But I do have a little bit of, if you want to call it waste, you can make a little pot holder or something, or a couple pot holders or something out of these pieces here. But there is that much left over. 4 strips left over. So now what I'm going to be doing is, again, I'm just doing it visually. Forget this, forget the pattern, forget numbers, oh my word, grids and everything. What I'm needing, what I see that I need here is I need to start with my green and then my white dot. So I'm going to find that here. I'm going to lay everything out. Now again, I'm not worried about my seams going which way because they will be going different ways, but that on these 4 seams, that's fine. I'll just press them real well. So I'm going to find my green. There we go, visually. Yeah, I'm going to fill that in, and I'm going to separate that here. Now I'm just going to lay everything out. But as you see over here, we have, oh, there's my phone. We have 1 too many. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take that off. I'm going to take that off, and there finishes this row here. You see that? I'll attach that strip to here and then to here, and then I'll make my center. Make my center by stitching these together, and I'll stitch that row, this little center row, to this one, and then I'll do the same thing. I will make this here, stitch this here to that, and then I'll stitch this top unit to my bottom, and then I'll put my little borders on the side. So here is my final quilt that I've done, my little square quilt with my lovely black dot there, which was my fabric B. I'm very pleased the way it's turned out. Just my quilt top. And as you knew, I had made my little mistake over on that one. I fixed that. I just wanted to just share this with you. I had made another one earlier. And look what I did. I made a mistake. I completely got that wrong. I pulled from my wrong pile. This is a little quilt I made. And I quilted it and everything. Simple little quilt. This is an easy quilt. There's my backing. I just quilted that in that grid pattern. But I'm just showing you this because you have to be very careful what pile you pull from. And because I was visually looking at the hot pink going around, which is the color that pops, I didn't realize I had gotten that upside down. I pulled from the wrong pile. So again, you just have to be very careful, which I will address in the beginning of my video. So there's my little, that one's done. That's about a 36-inch, and this is about 45-inch square. This one, just a little quilt over the back of a sofa. But yeah, now I have to quilt it.